All right, so today we're going to dive into a source that presents a really unique perspective on something we see all the time, but maybe don't truly observe: the moon. It proposes this idea of a forgotten truth, what it calls the law of the twin horizons. But before we get into the weeds here, I want to ask you something, a really simple question. Just take a second and think about it. When you picture the moon coming up, where does it rise? Well, the answer is in the east. Yep, just like the sun. And that's where this source material kicks things off, with a simple astronomical fact that, actually surprises a lot of people. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. The source argues this isn't just some random piece of trivia we all forgot. No, it claims this is an intentional deception. There's a reason it says that we tend to associate the moon with the West. And it gives a name to the forces behind this. It calls them the administrations. Now, according to the text, these are basically societal structures that allegedly have a very specific reason for wanting to hide the moon's eastern rise from all of us. So you might be asking, why? What's the point of hiding this? Well, the source says the goal is twofold. First, to disconnect us from the physical reality of the heavens, to kind of make us passive observers. And second, to hide what it calls a deep spiritual symmetry that's built right into the design of creation. And this really gets to the core of the whole idea. The text lays out this duality, right? By making us focus only on the sun rising in the east, society basically puts a premium on things like logic, hard work, visibility. And in doing that, it devalues the things associated with the moon's light, intuition, rest, and this really interesting concept the source calls the new grow. And that's the whole ball game right there. The source claims that if people really knew that both of these lights rise from the same exact place, well, our whole perspective would shift. The moon would be elevated to a rising power, an equal partner to the sun. Day and night would be seen as equals, coming from the same divine starting line. Okay, so where's the proof? Where does this idea come from? Well, the source dives into some really fascinating symbolic interpretations from the Old Testament, specifically looking at how the 12 tribes of Israel were arranged. So it points to the ancient encampment of Israel, as it's described in the book of Numbers, and it zeroes in on the east gate, the direction of the sunrise, and points out it was guarded by 3 very specific tribes. And here's how the source breaks down their symbolic roles. You've got Judah, representing the sun, authority, the scepter. But the real key, according to this text, is that tribe in the middle, Issachar. They were the ones known for understanding the times, and the source claims they did this by watching the moon rise in the east to figure out the true calendar cycle. And his quote from the text just nails the consequence of all this. It says, "By not teaching that the moon rises in the east, the world effectively blinds the Issachar spirit within the people." The idea is that we're stopped from understanding real time and this new grow because we're all looking at the wrong horizon. So all of this, it leads us right to the source's central argument, which is all about this incredible symmetry, a cosmic and spiritual alignment between these 2 giant celestial bodies. Okay, get this. The text points out something really cool. The moon rises about 50 minutes later every single day. But instead of that being erratic, the source calls this predictable, shifting eastward rise the precise clock of the universe. And from there, the source builds this really powerful theological analogy. It's kind of 2 steps. First, you have Christ as the Sun of Righteousness. That's the solar part, representing kingship. Then you have the church, or faith itself, as the moon, the lunar part, reflecting that light and representing the priesthood. So the fact that they both rise in the east, the source presents that as a kind of cosmic proof. The argument is that it shows that state logic, the sun, and spiritual intuition, the moon, are designed to be perfectly aligned because they literally rise from the exact same source. And you guessed it, this is where that societal administration comes back into play. The source claims it actively disrupts this beautiful harmony. By making the moon's behavior seem weird or unreliable, it separates the king from the priest, and it makes our intuition seem way less valuable than our logic. Okay, so that's the big picture theory. But what does it mean for you, for us? Well, according to the source, this isn't just about cool space facts. It's about reclaiming a lost identity, a lost way of seeing the world. This knowledge, it says, brings 3 huge things into your life. First up is alignment. You know to watch the east for the new moon so you're not just guessing when a new month begins. Then you have authority, a deep understanding that the night rises from the same divine place as the day. And finally, there's breakage. You get to break away from traditions that hide this natural, balanced order. And the whole argument really comes to a head in this one quote, which the source attributes to a theoretical text called the Demetrian Codexes. It says, "Failure to acknowledge the moon's eastern rise is the root of the stolen 13th month." It ties this whole thing to an even bigger calendrical puzzle. And this really brings us to the final takeaway. When you look at it through this lens, the simple act of watching the eastern horizon totally transforms. It becomes this intentional act of seeing both powers, the king and the priest, the sun and the moon, as equal partners rising together. So in the end, this source doesn't just leave us with a bunch of ideas. It actually gives us something to do. It leaves us with a final and I think really provocative thought. If we actually go out and watch the east for both the sun and the moon, what else are we going to see?